Hi and welcome to the channel. What you see before you is what should have been on actually last week's video. Hoping it was going to be this week, but it still isn't finished yet. It's being a right pain in the ass, so I thought today, because I just want to get a video done, I'm going to do something just a little bit different. This project's taking up my desk space at the minute, and I don't really want to tidy it up because it's going to be finished soon, and I'm just waiting for a couple of little bits and pieces to arrive that I've ordered online, and then that will be the next video. In the meantime, because it's taken up all my desk, I've got no room to do anything else, so I had to try and think of an idea that didn't involve taking a machine apart, and that's when I decided that this might be something worth looking at. So this slightly wobbly shot of my wall, or one of the walls in my house, is covered in autographs of retro developers, which was something I started collecting for a little while ago. So I've got a few of them now, and I thought, well, take a quick look at each one of them and who they are and what kind of games they did, and see if I've actually played any of them. So this all started, in fact, largely continued with a company called Fusion Books, who do Kickstarters of various retro books and stuff, which I'm quite into, but they also do a lot of perks with autographs, which is what this all started from. So the first one I got here was with one of their magazines called Fusion, and it's the Oliver twins. So the Oliver twins, Philip and Andrew, don't know which one's which, classic tale of sort of bedroom coders in the 80s. They produced their first game by sending off the code to magazines who published the code, and then the user had to type it in themselves onto their machine. I think they're mostly associated with sort of 8-bit stuff like for the Spectrum, the C64, Amstrad CPC, though I think they did do stuff for the NES and some of the 16-bits like the Atari ST and the Amiga. I think their most famous game is probably the Dizzy series of games, which I've heard of but never played. In fact, I'm sitting here looking at a big list of their games, and I don't think I've ever played anything that they produced at all, which is quite sad, really. They had a relationship with Codemasters, who did a lot of their publishing, but yeah, really, it's a bit of a shame. I've got their signatures, I know they're very well-known people, but never played any of their games. So next we have Archer McLean. Now Archer McLean is a name I was familiar with, but not for the reasons that this card depicts, because I didn't realise he did international karate until I got this autograph, though I was aware of the game and had played it before, and I actually have a copy of international karate from my Atari ST and play it quite regularly and enjoy it. So it's nice in this case to have a game that goes with the name. So I've got the autograph of somebody who wrote one of the games that I enjoy playing. He was mostly known to me before that as the maker of Archer McLean's Pool, and that's because I used to see this advert in magazines in the early 90s. This game has been marketed quite heavily, and he is kind of associated with these kind of games. He's done a few snooker games, pool games, that kind of thing, but it's international karate for me that I appreciate his skills for, and the one that I still play a lot, so it's nice to have a name that goes along with that game, and a game that I'll continue playing while I look at Archer's autograph hanging there on the wall. Next up is Kevin Toms, and he designed the very first Football Manager game. So this is a weird one in my collection. I'm not interested in football in any shape or form. I think this game came out originally on earlier 8-bits, so the TRS-80 and the ZX-81, but then it got a later release on the ZX Spectrum, and then it really blew up and became a big thing. And it goes on. So this game sort of came out in the early 80s, and it was, I guess, the start of it. There were other football games kicking around, but the sort of management sim, this was the start of that. And then you got your FIFAs cropping up a bit later. I think FIFA 1994 was the first one, and partly the reason why I will not entertain football games or sports games in general, but football in particular, is back in the early 90s I had a friend who got the first PlayStation, and he had FIFA on that, and when I used to go around to his house, he used to make me play it all the time, and I just used to take it lightly and think it was a bit of fun. He spent hours, sank hours into that game, learning all these fancy tricks and things, and I would go around and just mindlessly mash on my gamepad, and I'd still win more than my fair share of games. And that almost brought us to blows one night, and our girlfriends at the time had to tear us apart, and I just thought, really? But there you go. I won't be playing this game, but it's nice to have it as a little piece of history. Stoo Cambridge is next, and we continue a kind of football theme here because he was most famous for working for Sensible Software. So we're moving away from the sort of early 80s bedroom coders into the early 90s, and it really is, no disrespect to those sort of earlier programmers, but it's kind of comes into the realm of rock star developers when you get into the early 90s. So you've got, your Sid Meier's and your id Software and your Sensible Softwares and all these companies of just young people who are just full of beans. Basically, they're listening to great music, they're partying all the time, they're working their arses off and producing great games, and it just looks like they're having a riot. This is before the fangs of big business realised there was sort of money to be made there, and then we get into this sort of AAA churn that we're in now. But yeah, this is my era, so it's nice to have Stoo Cambridge's autograph in here, that's for sure. Games-wise, at the minute, I only have cannon fodder, I think, for my Amiga, but I played Megalomania on I think it was on the Mega Drive as well, one of the original RTSs, and the list of games he's been involved with is just long and full of good stuff. Star Wars games, Spider-Man games, all of the good stuff that came out of Sensible Software. So, yeah, pleased to have this autograph, and I must play cannon fodder again. Next, we've got another classic, Rob Hubbard. So this guy was a musician, a computer musician, and as far as I'm aware, he mostly worked on the Commodore 64, programming the SID chip. If I was being chronological, I should have probably put Rob Hubbard before Stoo Cambridge, because I think he was most of his good stuff was mid-80s to probably early 90s. So he was mostly known for programming the Commodore 64 SID chip, I believe. But later on, he moved to the States and worked for Electronic Arts, so he was working on things like Madden, football games, and games like Desert Strike and stuff like that. He's got a rich portfolio of funky stuff. So if I were to pick a game to affiliate with my autograph, I actually have a few with Rob Hubbard's soundtracks, but in a recent video where I did the mini Amstrad office setup and I ended up playing 688 Attack Sub on it, that's one of his, so I choose that as the game to go with the autograph. 688 Attack Sub is a cool game, I like that kind of thing, so another one where I've got a couple of great games to go with the autograph and the face. It's not only the games and the fact that I've got the autograph for this one, because I do have a C64 and I've always been kind of interested in the SID, because the SID chip in the C64 is just notorious for generating a kind of sound of its own, and I've always been kind of interested in maybe trying to make some chip tune music, and so I think it's definitely something I'll be looking into for a future video, is seeing about maybe doing some coding and see if we can program the SID directly on my C64. Tevor Storey's the next autograph, and he's got a shitload of stuff under his belt. Some pretty major games and a lot of indie games, a lot of everything basically. He's got a lot of games under his belt. Amazingly, I don't have any of them. I don't know whether he possibly mainly worked in consoles or whatever, I don't really know, or things that maybe didn't get ported. So just scanning down the list on his resume, I think probably the one that pops out most to me is Batman Forever, which is a 1996 PlayStation 1 game. That looks like a sort of AAA title to me if ever I saw one. I do have a PlayStation somewhere, so I could buy this and try it out, because I need a game to go with the name, which I'm going to do for all the other autographs now that I've started to think about it since doing this video. The nice thing about Tevor Storey as well is he's a local guy to me in the northeast of England. He lives in the nearest city to where I live, and you know, there's quite a lot of gaming stuff around here actually, come to think about it. There's a big Ubisoft studio in the nearest city, and then you read about people like Trevor, which might not seem like a big thing if you live in somewhere like London or New York, but in the northeast of England it's quite a big thing to have those things around. But Tevor Storey's done a bunch of covers for things like those Fusion magazines and stuff, and he's an awesome artist, so it's great to have particularly such a big poster like this one with his autograph on it, and I'm definitely going to check out that Batman game, I think. So the last one's John Romero, so that's a good one, and it's on a Doom poster, so what more could you want apart from John Carmack's and American McGee's and Adrian Carmack's and all the rest of them? It would be great to have the entire id Software autograph on here, but John Romero's good. It's a bit of a funny one, this, because I really didn't like John Romero. I didn't know who he was until probably after 2000. When I was playing Doom, I only had the shareware version, never registered it, and just played Deathmatch down a null modem cable, and that was pretty much it. I guess it was just after 2000, probably around the time of Daikatana's launch. There was all this John Romero's about to make you his bitch business, which I vaguely remember. But I remember a lot of interviews, and I remember seeing, it wasn't so much this, other pictures of him with his long flowing locks and his posy sort of demeanour, and I didn't like him very much, to be honest. But over the years since then, reading books like Masters of Doom and watching YouTube interviews and stuff like that, he just seems like such a nice guy, and he's given such a shitty ride at id when they ousted him, and he's living and working in Ireland, I think now, which is really that far away from here either, so cool. But when it comes to games to link with this autograph, I've got Wolfenstein 3D on the Mac, one of my Macs, and it's still got to be Doom. Doom's the only PC game I've got. I really ought to seek out some of the earlier games like the Commander Kings and stuff like that, but those are the only two I've got, so Doom's the one that has to be associated with this particular autograph, I think. So there you go, that's the end of the video because I've run out of autographs. So I'm going to get back to trying to fix up that 286 build I was doing for the next video, and hopefully that will be done in a few days. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this slightly different to usual video, and if you did, it'd be great if you would give comments, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.